Welcome to Product by Design with Kyle and Eva,
a podcast about product management and product design,
where we'll talk about subjects from product strategy to inclusive design.
Every episode, we just have a good conversation about all the things that you may already know or not know, and occasionally we'll have a guest from maybe engineering or other product managers and designers to talk about all these topics.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of Product by Design with Kyle and Eva. How's it going today, Eva?
Good. I feel like spring is finally here. It feels very springy today.
Yeah.
I want summer to come tomorrow, but the spring is not too bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll take the slow stepping into summer. The cool, like long spring, nice cool weather, rain and stuff like that. So I'll be happy with that. Summer's nice, but it can get too hot too fast sometimes. So
right. Just a reminder, we are in Utah, dear listeners. Yeah. So we can complain about the summer and the winter. I do not mind the summer at all, but I will share with you the troubles that we've been encountering at our plot of land that we own here. Is I mean, I feel bad outing him here, but my husband might have busted all the sprinkler valves. So the lawn has been dying. Yep. And we're first time homeowners. So it's been really fun trying to gauge how big this issue is. Do we want to hire somebody? And we've been manually watering the lawn and it's all good. Yeah, this is a very not interesting story, but it's been the center of my universe for the past 4 weekends. Yeah. And it's been very fun. And this also turned into a community event when all my neighbors, by that, I mean 4 or 5 different houses, saw us trying to tinker with the sprinklers. And they all came out and asked, oh, what are you guys up to? What you doing? My name is Danny and John, whatever. And what are you guys up to? Who are you? And then it turned into kind of a block party. It was really nice. Not going to lie. Nice. It was really nice to kind of meet people through a problem that they know more about. So, yeah. That's good. It's always good to start meeting neighbors and meeting people, even if it's through a terrible thing like that. I'll just I absolutely loathe irrigation and sprinklers and stuff like that. For people, I don't know how widespread this is in other places, but widespread like a disease.
Well, I mean, certainly in other countries, you probably don't have full on irrigation systems in your lawn. I'm assuming. It can be super nice to have a nice lawn and then to have the irrigation system to just water your lawn and have that all work when it's working. Such a pain when it's not. We were going through something similar where they'll just break frequently. It's not the stuff that you get for your sprinklers and your irrigation system. It's not long-term stuff. You're constantly maintaining it. And we started the year as soon as the water was pressurized for us, because we get irrigation water into ours. So it's it doesn't come from the city water. So they turn it on in the spring. Yeah. So it's actually cheaper, which is awesome. What? It's just uber cheap, which I don't know how yours is, but ours, it's not treated. It's secondary water. They pressurize it in the spring and then turn it off in the fall. But it costs something really inexpensive. It's a couple $100 for the whole year. Yeah.
What does it cost the earth? Just kidding.
For this? Oh no, it all goes back into the earth. It's the water cycle. It's a beautiful thing. We started with a similar problem. They pressurized it and we had leaks everywhere. Not everywhere, but in one place in particular. So I had to dig up a whole bunch of places in our lawn to try and figure out what was going on. and eventually did. And it was in none of the places I was looking. And it was just super frustrating. I can't even tell you how frustrated I was, like, to have dug up my lawn looking for these leaks only to find it in another place. But anyway, that's the joy of sprinklers and irrigation systems, which we don't like, but that's, I guess, a small complaint for being able to enjoy a nice big lawn, I guess.
That's my hope is to replace half my lawn with some sort of ground materials that don't cost any time to maintain. Also don't cost as much water, because we just bought this house.
Yeah.
And love the lawn, whatever, but too much of it. I don't need that much grass. What am I going to do with it? Right. Anyways, trying to build a greenhouse at some point, but this is what are those lawn podcasts called? Like, aren't there like podcasts for home maintenance and stuff like that?
I'm sure there's tons. Yeah. I haven't really delved into any of those, but I'm sure there's some great ones out there. Okay.
We're going to rename our podcast to Lawn Talks.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
This is that episode, but I feel like this is a first world problem to have for sure.
It probably
and
is.
I'm trying so hard not to tell why the problems happen. I even though I already outed my husband, like busted the valves and stuff, but he just hulked them out of the valves. Like, that's seemed like a small problem until we found out that some of them had stripped screws, so we couldn't open them to replace the parts. And now we're talking about replacing the entire system. Anyways, not the entire system, but the actual thing.
Yep.
But so in the past like 2 weeks, people ask me like, "Oh, how's wedding planning?" I'm like, "Let me tell you about my sprinklers." Like, wedding planning is fine. It's gonna happen, which actually needs to happen a lot faster. But that's a second, third, fourth podcast that we can go into.
Yeah.
Wedding talks by me. But anyways, so what's going on? What's new with you?
Gosh, it's just so many things. We started building a deck this weekend, and it is going along slowly, like most home projects. So, like everything, and this probably goes into like product development and everything else that we do. Yeah, you can have all of the plans that you want, and like, have a really good idea of what you're doing, and I feel like I always do. Like I have everything like really, like a really good understanding of everything that we're going to do. But then once you get into it, there are just the things that you cannot anticipate. And that's where we were. Like what should have taken like part of the morning on a Saturday morning, which was to take off the old stairs from the house, turned into like the better part of a day, because they had like glued the stairs to the siding of the house. And so like we got everything unscrewed and bolted, and like we're pulling everything off, but then that took longer than it should have. And then like there were hidden screws like under washers, and like it was glued on. And so like it was just an absolute mess trying to get it was just stairs off of the house. And then we ended up ruining part of the siding, so we had to go get new siding. All of these like unanticipated things that in your planning you just really don't take into account, because it should be this part is just taking off stairs. I've taken off stairs before. It's not a huge thing, but there's just unexpected things. Then you have to go to the hardware store, and I have to get new siding, and then you have to cut
5 trips.
Yeah, all of those things that even when you're planning for like a few of them, there's just unanticipated things. And that's why, despite your plans, things will always take longer and be more complex than what you are anticipating. And that's what it is with home projects. And it's the same with product development. Gosh, we're getting into like, this is like one of my big things with like project planning versus like product development is like, you can have a project plan, but you cannot like really understand it until you actually get into the work. And at that point, like you may have said, here's our timeline and things like that. But like once you're in it, things change. And like, if you're not adaptable, then your timeline is pointless. Like you really have to focus on what is it that we're trying to do? And are we really accomplishing those important things? The important thing isn't necessarily the timeline, though. That's an important component of it, but it's not like the most important. So like, you can't lose sight of all of those things. So anyway, that's just total soapbox that I did there on my deck and how we started it. And it's taking longer than it should. And what I had hoped to get done on a Saturday, we only got a very small portion done. But anyway.
This is probably one of the most relatable moments on this podcast, is everyone going through that like scoping and then roadmap and then planning for your timeline, all these things in both professional and personal life, because literally just did that at work, where we're like, we need to expect the, variables and the unknown, and how much time do we want to plan for that? But for some reason in my personal life, I don't like doing it like I do work stuff. So I rarely want to sit down and be like, okay, if I wasn't doing it for myself, how would I do it? And that's kind of how I would, give advice to other people in their lives and say, plan for the unexpected. But then with the whole sprinkler thing, we're like, yeah, we're going to do it in one morning. Nope. Like exactly what you just said, doesn't happen in a morning, takes up your whole day. And you only have so many weekends before winter comes. So what do you do? Got to plan for the unexpected. I need to really start planning my own life, like work, which sounds stressful.
Well, and hopefully, I mean, good on you if your work is planning like that, because most places don't. I mean, most places are like, we need the dates that you're going to hit all of these things, like here's the quarter, plot out all the dates, and then, like, why aren't you hitting all of these dates that you said 3 months ago that you'd be able to hit? And it's like, well, like, hold on a second. We had an idea that this is how it was going to go. But like, once you get into things, like, it changes dramatically. Like you really just can't understand what the intricacies and complexities and dependencies are going to be until you actually start putting this thing together and how it's going to interact with other parts of the code and how it's going to interact with other applications and user experiences and how people are going to react to it and things like that. And once you start to get that feedback, then you have to just make adjustments. And so to get really wrapped around the axle over a timeline or over dates is something that a lot of companies and a lot of people, they hold on to that even when, things change. And you can probably tell, like, I woke up this morning thinking a lot about this. So I've written a lot about this topic, and there is more to come, because this was like a huge topic on my mind, which may be why we're talking a little bit about it, why the deck thing got me started on it today. But anyway, good on any company that has that mindset, and anybody who does have that mindset, because it's like, you really, if you're not adjusting to things, like if you stick to a plan, despite things that are changing, then you're probably missing out on more important things. Like if your plan is an awesome plan and you're able to stick to it and everything goes according to it, then that's awesome. But chances are
teach us how to do that.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, if it goes 100% to the plan, please tell me.
Yeah. Chances are it's just not going to, though. So that's where you just have to figure out, like, what's the most important thing. And chances are it's not the plan or not the timeline that is going to be the most important thing. Like that's just what you have to take into consideration. Is that the most important, or is it something else that you're trying to do or to change or to accomplish that's the most important thing? And make those trade-offs and decisions. Like is it making something better? Is it changing some behavior? Is it driving some sort of metric? Like, are those the important things? Or is it like hitting dates? Like, is that the most important thing? And most of the time I say like hitting certain dates is probably not the most important thing. So yeah.
Oh, you heard it here. Funny because right now we're definitely struggling with fitting everything into the timeline at work. And it's been very fun to, try to make it work and not, have bodies along the way where we sacrifice people's happiness and all that. And that is a big topic, not just for me, not just for you, but for everybody.
Yeah.
This is like the most natural segue I think I'm able to do in the past, like however long we've done this.
Nailed this segue. Yeah.
And so, yeah, what are we talking about today?
Burnout. And this, it's a great topic. What is burnout? How can we identify it? How can we avoid it? And, what are the repercussions of it? And so it is a great segue because, when you get into going along those same lines, when you get into the timeline driven, I've been in this situation. We've probably all been in it, where you get into what one of my teams called like death marches, where you have like this timeline of like, here it is. Here's what we have to do. A lot of times you'll just be handed that too. Good. It's like, here's what you have to do. And this is probably like the absolute worst case scenario. It's like, here's the things that you have to accomplish without much like input into it. And it's like, okay, like there's just no way that we can accomplish this without a death march. And people end up just like killing themselves over it. And, you're working late, no breaks or time away in order to like accomplish a list of features or, get something delivered or something like that. And that just can be depending on the circumstances, I mean, could be like a really awesome thing, or that could be like a real like burnout scenario. Like in one case, if you're like working on something awesome and everybody's bought into it and it's like, yes, we got to get this thing, delivered, then, that could be a really good scenario. On the flip side though, if it's like, every executives or leaders are like, here's the thing you're doing, you got to make it happen. And everybody's like, well, why are we doing this? Like, this is impossible. What is the point of this? And they're just like, no, just do it. And then you kind of just go along and it's like, well, the only way we can do this is if we work late, we work weekends, and we just, we sacrifice everything to get this done.
Right.
And, that's the quintessential death march. And then you do it and you deliver it, and then only to enter in again to like the next death march.
Right. And now you have done it. Do it again.
Yeah, exactly. And that can lead to serious burnout. And I have witnessed that firsthand, where you get into the cycle of like working, delivering, and then, just kind of this never ending cycle of just working without a real motivation or driver or purpose behind it, but just because, that's what you have to do in order to just get things done. And that can be super, super demotivating for everybody on a team and for individuals and for an entire organization too. So yeah, if you have that kind of mindset at your company, that is a quick way to lead to burnout for everybody.
Yeah. And maybe I'm jumping the gun already, but I always think that it comes down to, well, this is not the only cost, but I think in my own experience, the common cost is kind of like what you just mentioned, right? Like overpromise and not being able to deliver, and everyone kind of have to spend those extra hours, days and nights to make it happen. And even, I don't know how you feel the same way, but when I first learned about the term crunch for engineering, that has like, I was so shocked that there is a term for it, because it's so, does that mean it's so normalized to a point where like, oh, we're just doing this thing. Oh, we're crunching. Like that to me was shocking to find out that's a thing. But I do think from what I've seen, it happens more with engineering side rather than, I guess, design, UX, or product management side. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen for us, but I just see in my personal opinion, personal experience, that happens more with engineers. And right now I'm kind of seeing that within my own circle. But at the same time, I feel like I'm personally kind of getting a little more stressed than I would like to feel too. Yeah, I don't like it. Nobody likes it. I would say, I don't know. I wish we could all just under promise and then over deliver. That's always a better plan, in my opinion. But yeah, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I would definitely prefer that. And that's, I guess it's one of those like hard lines to walk where everybody's looking for different things, from like product development teams, you're looking to do one thing, which is hopefully create something awesome, create value for users in your business. And then, from other places within an organization, they're looking for different things as well, like how it relates to, how those new things are going to relate to their work. And so, just from the kind of the world that we live in, which is a little bit more ambiguous, they're looking for a bit more certainty or a little bit more concreteness on what there is, so that they can also have some planning and some things around it. And so there's kind of this tension between what a lot of product development is doing, so product and UX and engineering, and what other roles are doing. And that can lead to some of these, difficulties in, what one side is looking for versus what another is. And who wins that battle is often like a very cultural thing. Like, do you lean much more on the side of embracing some of that ambiguity and understanding that, we have to make adjustments and be flexible as we go? Or do you lean much more heavily on the side of like, we are going to embrace certainty, even though you can never really have certainty? Like I always feel like it's like, we're going to lie to ourselves and we're going to just say, these are the dates and this is what we're going to do. And then when things go off the rails, it's just like, what happened? Oh that. No, how come we didn't hit these? How come we didn't hit these dates and this timeline and all that stuff? And it's like, we never were going to. Like, we had this plan, which was always a lie to begin with, but it was like a hopeful lie. But we kind of craved that certainty. And so whether it's from like other departments or from leadership. And so you have, you just have that tension, and who wins out in some of those battles often determines kind of the culture of the organization, whether you're willing to embrace more uncertainty or whether you're going to kind of push hard on like that timeline. And if that's going to push people to kind of to that burnout, which as we talk about it, I feel like we should probably define it a little bit, because it's been kind of like an ambiguous term. So maybe we should put like a little definition around it, which I found helpful, like as I've talked about it and thought about it. So this has come, you can add, feel free to add to this, but the key symptoms that as I've read about burnout have really come down to like three key things for me, which are, and this, I guess I'll step back. So the World Health Organization added burnout to their list of diseases and occupational phenomena. So it's not really a disease, it's more of like an occupational phenomenon. And they classify it as chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed, with three key symptoms. So one is exhaustion, 2, cynicism, and 3, shame and inefficacy. So I think that having all of those is kind of like a key thing. So it's kind of like this chronic stress, exhaustion, cynicism, and then like shame and inefficacy. So when you have all of that and it's kind of like chronic going on for a long time, then you really have like this occupational phenomenon of burnout, which, you know, I think we all feel like exhaustion from time to time, and probably all feel like cynical from time to time too, like in our role, like, you know,
how
this
do you
is
measure
just,
that?
and I think it's the chronic part. Like it's ongoing. It's not well managed. And so like, it's not that you just feel exhausted like today or this week, or you feel cynical in this meeting, because if that was the case, then like, I mean, I feel cynical in a lot of meetings.
I'm like, is it a personality trait or is it?
Or like you feel, you know, just like you're being inefficient or just ineffective in what you're doing. Which again, I think is like, we all probably feel some of that at times where, you feel like you're not, I mean, there was a day last week where I was not getting stuff done, and it was really bad. And I had a ton of stuff to do, and I just could not get hardly any of it done. And it was really, really tough. But fortunately, it was just like one day I was able to bounce back from it. But if you're chronically having all of those things, then like those are probably real signs that you're facing like some serious burnout.
Even though I was joking about cynicism, is that a personality trait? I definitely was joking about that because, I mean, people can be, you know, cynical by default. But I think you pointed out the key part being you feeling chronically, you know, skeptical about everybody's, you know, intention of blah, blah, at work like that. The chronic part is kind of a key piece to that. And it's interesting that they call it what is that called? An occupational phenomenon and not a condition. Because I was probably looking at a very similar source to what you're looking at too. And they, you know, the term burnout originated, I think, 50 years ago in the 70s, but they have not updated it from what I know until, you know, recently. And the update that you just mentioned kind of align perfectly with, you know, what we're experiencing as a society in the COVID timeline. And I was reading in LinkedIn in their blog post, they quoted this study done by Glint of just a survey of employees experiencing burnout. And in past years, before COVID era, the past 2 years before then, probably, I'm guessing, 2018 to 2019, the number that they were observing averaged at 4.12% of employees saying that they are, you know, burnt out, compared to last year, starting in April, it started to rise. And in August 2020, it went up to 5.41%. And I think it's interesting the timing where, you know, WHO kind of put out that new definition. And I don't know enough to say why they did it during that time and also what the impact really was directly, because it's a pretty big deal, right? Like, such a big organization, you know, put out that update. So, and I also was kind of, I guess not shocked, but it was interested in understanding why it is an occupational phenomenon, not a hazard. Phenomenon just kind of made it sound like, you know, the coral reef is doing this thing, you know, in Australia. It sounds more like something that just happens versus something that is caused by organization or, you know, have a very direct correlation to what's happening here. And then this thing happens. So it's just like the word phenomenon is very interesting. So yeah.
Yeah. It's probably one of those, I don't know, still up and coming things. And probably as we understand more about it, it'll be interesting, but it's definitely, I think one of the important parts is how related it is to work, especially in the context that we're talking about it. And so like, as we talk about solutions too, or like ways to handle it, I think that'll be such a critical part is that, for me, it's a critical part because work is part of the problem and it has to be part of the solution too. So like, we'll probably touch on that a couple times, is like, if your company or your organization or your team is like part of this, like in order to fix it or make it better, like they also have to be part of the solution in order to help everybody deal with it. It can't be something that just individuals or employees deal with on their own, though there are things like we can do to handle burnout. If you have a culture, a burnout culture, then right. I mean, you either have to change that or you got to get away from it, because that's just it's not sustainable. So,
and by getting away from it, you mean quit and leave?
Do something. Yeah. I think I mean, that's one of the things that, like, when I think about how to handle or like ways to address burnout, is like, there are certain companies that, and certain cultures and organizations that are just geared in that way, that are very much like, we're just going to work in like this either death march type of way, or we're just going to not pay attention to the way that people feel like they need to work, or other things like that. Like, they have a very set mindset on what they're going to do, and that can be really difficult to change. And if that's just not for you, either in your company or your specific role, like, I think there are companies like that. I also think there are specific roles that can be very much like that within organizations or companies, or even within like industries, that may not be right for some people. That just like product management, for example, I'll use that as an example, is it lives within ambiguity. If you don't like ambiguity, if you don't like constantly living within this set of chaos, then it is not the right role for you. And I've talked with people like that are just like, I don't deal well with chaos and like ambiguity. Then that's totally fine. Product management is probably not the role for you. And so, finding going along with like burnout, like if that type of thing just like really burns you out, then, finding the type of thing that doesn't do that for you, that actually has maybe the opposite effect. Like if that sort of thing like really just lights you up, and it's like, man, this is exciting, like solving problems and like it's just constant challenge, then that's probably something that would be really good for you. And so like finding the right type of role, and then finding the right type of company that can support the way that you work. I've been reading a lot about Amazon recently, and they have a very specific way of working. And I've worked for Amazon executives before, and it can be like a real challenge if you're not used to that way of working, and two, if it's not the way that you're kind of geared to work. And so like they understand that at Amazon, I think, like, and not talking, I think, let me take a step back there for a second. I think there's lots of things that Amazon probably should do for a lot of their employees in a lot of places. I'm talking more specifically like on their technical side, like product development. But that aside, for like within some of their product organizations, which would be what I'm more familiar with, that way of working like is like, it's very, very driven in a certain way. And it can be like a real difficult thing for some people. It can be like a really awesome thing for others. And so like, if that's the kind of culture you want, then you may find your place at Amazon. If it's not the kind of culture that you thrive in, like that will burn you out fast and is not a great place for you. So anyway, those are like, when it comes to like roles and companies and organizations, like it's a serious thing to understand and think about.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of people look at those, big tech companies as like, oh, that's my dream job. And I used to be one of them too. But the more I have, been with different companies, the more I realize like, it's really not about one better than the other, but it's about the fit do you want what they offer, and vice versa, right? It's about that match and that culture. You don't get to choose what culture, they have within the company. If it's something that you don't agree with, like Kyle just said, like, it's not going to be, well, first, you can't change their culture, just you, one person. And you also cannot ask them to change it. Right. And I like what you said about it, dealing with ambiguity, because I think that's probably one of the top items where it will happen. And if it's not a right fit, don't force it. And there is another place that will fit you better. That's not to say like you are the problem, but that's definitely just something that you have the power to say, well, I'm going to walk away from this culture. And it's not easy, right? Because we all need to pay rent and do all that stuff. And I'm sure in a second, we're going to get into how to deal with, that on a personal level. But it's unfortunate that I do think the bigger companies, they have a lot more resources and also more ways and people in place and structure to handle those things versus some of the smaller organizations that might not be as aware, or they might not look at themselves as, oh, this is a problem happening, to us too. Because I do feel that sometimes smaller organizations, especially the leaders, are so, especially startups, right? Sometimes when you're in such a growth phase, there's so much happening. Some people do, put their people first, but I see some that are more worried about, growing the business. And what does that mean, to that group of leaders? That might be different than what you want them to worry about. And it's, on a personal level, I think we as employees can always do things to resist, but it's not to cure the problems. So that's kind of how I see it personally. I feel like this is getting into like hot takes, but it's not. I feel like it's not that hot, but I really believe, it's organizational type problem. So. Yeah,
definitely. And there's certainly, so, I mean, like you can't change a culture, you alone. Like if you're the CEO or like a high level executive of a small company, like you can have a lot of influence over a period of time, but like changing culture is extremely, extremely difficult. So it's a really good point. But there are things that like we can do as employees to identify burnout as it's happening, and then to take steps to address it and avoid it. And I think one of those really is like finding the right fit, both in role and organization and team and company. And that's like a bigger challenge, but it's an important one, because there are some places and roles that are just better for certain people and others that aren't. And so like finding that right thing is really important, and just understanding when the fit isn't there, and whether that's the role or like the team or the company, and being able to identify that and be reflective enough to understand that, and then like take steps to make the right changes is super important. But within that too, I think that like there are other things like that we can do too. Like it kind of sounds like a little cliche almost, but I think it's super important to, there's a couple things I think are super important, but like taking breaks. It sounds stupid, but it's so important.
It shouldn't sound stupid and boring.
And this is one that, so we were just up in, I think this is important, like at a couple different levels. So like one, taking breaks like during the day, because I think it's easy to get burned out like intraday. So like actually stepping away from the computer and like taking a walk, which is something I'm a huge fan of. I started doing this years ago, like going and walking around the parking lot, like when we're actually in offices, and just like taking a break during the day to like collect my thoughts and like get some air in the parking lot or in other places. Like if you have a better place to go, like take a break. Now it's nice because it's like go walk around the neighborhood now that it's like spring and that sort of stuff. But doing that is, I don't know, it's like super rejuvenating, like during the day.
Stepping away for a second to organize, recenter.
Yeah, because
recenter is a very yogi term, I feel like, but I do think it applies.
Yeah, it's easy to just get burned out like during the day when it's just constant work all day long, even at home, without like actually taking some time away, and then like doing the same during the week, and then like actual vacations too. Like we just went up to Yellowstone this past week, and it was like the first break I've taken this year, which should probably take more, like take my own advice and actually take more. But I was I was talking to a friend on the way up, and he was actually talking about doing the same thing, actually taking a break. So shout out to a mutual friend of ours and of the show. We'll see if he listens to this episode and if he gives us a shout out back, but who was saying the same thing, like that he needed to take a break and was just going to like literally take some time off and not do anything, but just like take time off because he was like starting to feel burnt out too. Like we're having kind of almost a similar conversation, right. And so important because to like actually get away for like a longer period of time and not be so focused all the time on just work.
Yeah.
Which, given like our pandemic, I feel like the lines between work and personal, they've just like there's more flexibility, but it's also gotten a lot blurrier too. And so
that like, distance is shortened. It's more like you're working and you're at home, and a lot of people are working from home, right? That line's blurred, like you said. But even, I mean, now I started going back to the office recently, and it feels like the distance between life and work life, it's been shortened for some reason. So yeah, I see what you're saying. Sorry, continue. Kind of cut you off there.
Yeah, no, and just like actually getting away, and like I like to gauge it in, and I didn't forget my passwords, but like how close do you come to forgetting your work passwords? Like by the time you get back, like if you totally forget them, then that was like a long enough break away from actual work to like mentally disengage and then come back. Like that's a good time period. So that's like super important in my mind anyway.
Put this there is that means you need also a password manager. I'm hearing that, but I see what you're saying though. Like once you have to kind of like, when you're back at work and sit down, be like, oh, okay, now, I'm ready to pick it back up. That's a good indication. But password manager, Kyle, need one of those. Well, I might give a shout out to the one I used at the end of this episode, actually. Anyways, but yeah, I like what you're saying. And I think that's, but that also goes back to when we talk about an unreasonable timeline. That's also the hardest thing to do. Yep. So that's why at the beginning I was like, oh, that's not silly. That's something we should all be able to do. But at the same time, it goes back to the cause of the problem. Sometimes it's not something that we, get to control. And then getting away from that, whatever scale you can do that, like let it be walking away for 5 minutes, going on a walk during the day, even if you cannot, take a trip to go to Yellowstone, right? Like make sure you walk away in a way that works for you without, again, just without saying, oh, well, I can't do that small thing. So let's just not do anything, even though you can't go on a trip, go walk around the pond or whatever. That's what I used to do at work. And so I really like that. And man, it's so hard, but I'm excited. Next week, I am walking away to go out of town for a couple of days. And also right now it's a good time because everyone's getting vaccinated. Everyone's kind of more ready to go outside and interact again. The weather's getting better. So yeah, take a drive. To me, taking a drive is very therapeutic.
Yeah.
Do you like doing that?
Taking a drive? Yeah, I do. No, my wife absolutely loves it. So, and she grew up where you had to drive anywhere to get somewhere. Yeah. I mean, the store was like a 30-minute drive. And so like that was, so yeah, road trips and drives and things like that. That's definitely her thing too. So
I feel like your enthusiasm to saying yes to the drive was like about 5 out of 10 than what I've seen you.
Walks for me, like walking is my thing. Like if I'm gonna, I dig a good walk, because that for me is like really good thinking time, and it's like a little bit of exercise. So if I'm choosing, I'm gonna choose to like go for a walk, so I can like, I don't know. It's kind of the same as a drive. I enjoy drives, but more like. I don't get the exercise, like, get out and get some movement. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, luckily we're in Utah, so I like driving into the mountains and just be like away from people, away from everything. But yeah. Yep. Driving's good.
Definitely. I think another important thing for me is like finding the why in what you're doing, and like really having a good reason. I'm huge on like, why are we doing the things that we're doing, and like really understanding that. I was actually listening to another podcast that kind of got into this, and there was a story about a teacher who was working. She was getting burnt out too, which I think teaching is probably a role that you could get burnt out in super fast. She was teaching high school, and at I think like an inner city high school or something like that. And so she was trying to get these underperforming students ready for college and was just failing at it. Like it was, so she was putting in a ton of extra time, trying to get her students like ready for college, passing high school and things like that. And was just really, really struggling and getting burnt out. And at that point she decided to start mentoring students on the weekend, which is just like totally like you're getting burnt out. And so you're going to like add something on the weekend. But that it turned out for her, like that was like the saving grace of everything that she was doing, because it like solidified the why she was doing it and helped her get back to, it's not just like constant churning and constant work. It's like helping individual students succeed. And like, so she started this mentoring program, and like, it really helped her almost recenter again on like, why am I doing this? Like, and helped her find her love for teaching, which like helped again, drive her back to like, I can do this. Like, I'm not burning out. I actually love what I'm doing, and that sort of thing. So like finding the why, and finding like the wins that we can actually celebrate along the way. And it's like, okay, why are we doing this thing? Which that gets back to the point that we were kind of making earlier. Like if you're just handed a list of things to do and it's like, here's your list, like, and here's the date you have to do it by, that becomes very, very difficult, because it's like, why are we doing this other than like we've been handed a list and it's our job? And it's very disempowering to be like, okay, well, now we have to work nights and weekends in order to get this list of things done. Like that's really terrible, as opposed to like, here's a real problem to solve that like we have discovered, and like we want to change this. We want to make this thing better. Working really hard and working long to solve that problem, and then finding success in it. Like that's it. Those two things might look the same from the outside. Like you're working hard, you're working long, but they have like really different intrinsic motivation behind it. Like one, you're like intrinsically motivated, and the other is just like you're being pushed from the outside. And so like the burnout rate on one versus the other is going to be like really high versus really low. So finding ways both as a team to say like, okay, this is why we're doing it. And as a team and an individual, like this is why I'm doing it. This is why we're doing the things that we're doing. And as a leader, like finding ways to say, we can't just hand people stuff to do and be like, this is your thing. This is your job. Just do it. Finding ways to say like, here's the things that we need to do as a company. Like, here's the problems to solve, go solve them. We're not going to like hand you a list of things to do. Like we need you to come up with that list to solve these problems. And like, those are just really different models of working. One of them, I think, really motivates people. One of them disempowers people and burns them out. So like, choosing which way you're going to do it, I think, is a huge cultural thing, and a huge, like, one's really empowering and exciting to work for. One is the kind of place where you'll burn out.
There's a theme that I think is kind of showing from what you have talked about and what I've talked about. And maybe this is a good time for me to bring up this study done by Gallup. They have done a burnout study of what are the causes, common causes of burnout amongst workers. And here are 5 factors that are the most highly correlated with burnout. Are you ready for them?
Yeah.
Okay. First, unfair treatment at work. Number 2, unmanageable workload.
Yep.
Number 3, lack of role clarity. Number 4, lack of communication and support from manager. Number 5, unreasonable time pressure. So I think all of these reasons are very tangible to all of us in different ways. And going back to what I mentioned earlier is that being burnt out, it's not something that is caused by, you individually, right? Like, because you didn't come up with the timeline yourself at work. And it's, as a company, what the company can offer you should not, take away your personal time from your family and all these things. And by having an unreasonable timeline and all these, demands in place, it kind of creates a situation where it leads to workers feeling burnt out, right? And I think it's very interesting that all 5 of these causes from that study all points to, again, organizations, not on the individual level. And I think everything that we've talked about kind of circle back to that point. And these things that we as, employees are able to do sometimes not be able to just completely remove all these causes. You're just resisting, kind of putting a Band-Aid on the situation. Right.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate, but there's one thing that has been helpful for me personally. This is actually something that my personal trainer has taught me, which is a surprising source of dealing with burnout, is to put down on your calendar when you're going to stop working. Mm-hmm. Literally just set an event on your calendar and say, this is the time that I'm going home, and just stop that from, spilling over to your personal life. It has been very helpful for me. And I think this can be very good for anybody to try it out if you can. And because sometimes you have to work until 7, then you say 7 is the cutoff time, or 7:30, whatever it is. Right. But yeah, I have been enjoying that a lot, because I'm just like, yes, I'm going to be done. At least I can get some sleep. I think sleep also is one thing that can help you to stay away from feeling that cynicism more too. And of course, the exhaustion part of it too. So time boxing when you're actually going to, work, when you're actually clocking out. I think that's one blessing and one curse from being salaried employee, is that you are constantly giving, and sometimes the overtime is just it's just overtime, right? Yep. And cap that to a point where you can get some sleep. So that's kind of what I've learned.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing is where possible, like taking as much control of like that time and those of your day and your schedule as you can. Like that's, I think we've talked about it here. Like I'm such a huge proponent of like blocking out, especially time like during the day. And then like you said, like having an end time to like when you're absolutely done, and then like actually being done. And I think that can be like as flexible as need be. Like I think especially going, the way we've been and going forward, schedules can and should be, flexible to people's needs. Like if it's mornings and then like personal time, like during the day, and then like, whatever the work schedule needs to be, but then like actually setting it and being like, this is work time and this is not work time. And within that work time too, being very much like, this is meeting time, because I feel like a lot of what happens is like the day gets filled up with meetings. And then a lot of the spillover is just like, all right, now I have to get my actual work done. And that takes place like, later in the day, in the evenings and stuff like that. And so like actually trying to take back control of the time during the day. So it's not just like constant time spent either in meetings or just like context switching and going back and forth over stuff, but actually saying, here's the time that I'm going to be working on these different things so that I can actually accomplish meaningful stuff, as opposed to just like, constantly thrashing over like, here's meetings and here's urgent requests and stuff like that, so that you're actually in control of what you're doing, as opposed to like just being like thrashed about. And then, it gets to be late in the evening and you're like, oh man, I'm still working. Like, what am I doing? Right.
I like that you mentioned the dedicated time to kind of like full turbo during that time, right? Basically. Yeah. How can I ask, like, how many hours of meetings you have per week? Just ballpark.
That's a good question. It's actually come down significantly. I feel like I've gotten a pretty good handle on it, and we've like been putting it. Yeah, it's been surprisingly good. Even my wife has commented on it, like that my meetings have gone down quite a bit lately. So it's, I don't know, probably on any given week, like maybe a quarter or a third of my time is meetings. So it's which has been unusually nice, because it used to be flipped. Like a quarter of my time was like out of meetings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so that's probably just been a huge, huge benefit.
Yeah.
And so it can go up from there, but I mean, like on a like slower, nice, normal week, probably about a third of my time, which it's great.
I think from all the, people in product management that I know, everyone's schedule is so different. And for example, my husband, who's also a product manager, his schedule is literally 90% meetings, which is kind of insane to me. And I mean, he does block out time to get things done too, where you are saying, a third of your time is meeting. And I know someone who's kind of in the middle, half and half. Yeah. I think it's interesting. And we haven't even brought up the Zoom fatigue syndrome, where you're way too tired from being on Zoom, staring at a screen, being in meetings with people, where by the time you get to doing your own work that you have to do yourself, like you're already tired and exhausted, right? Do you feel that?
I was feeling it for sure. And so it's, some of our meetings too, we've switched to being, and this is like just cultural, like to just being audio only. So, you don't even have to be like on screen, which is nice. Cause then, oh,
nice.
Yeah. So you're not like constantly on screen all the time, which has been good, but definitely was feeling that before, where it's just, I think everybody's like, for a while was really trying to fill out like cultural norms and like Zoom norms and stuff like that. And it was just like really, really difficult, because it was like all Zoom all the time. And now, I don't know, at least for me, I feel like it's normalized quite a bit more to where, kind of like we were saying, a third of my time is like regularly scheduled stuff. And then that probably goes up to just ad hoc, 50% on any given week of, meetings and things like that. And then like the rest of the time, other stuff. But yeah, I think I was feeling that Zoom fatigue, probably just like everybody else, like being just on Zoom or on video conferences, like all the time, and then not being able to like do anything else, because you're just like constantly like looking at your screen and being on camera. I don't know. It's like being on a show all day long or something. It's like, this is just really, really strange and difficult. Cause even in like meetings in an office, like it wasn't the same. Like you didn't have everybody like literally sitting in front of you in every way, like where you were all looking at each other. And so it's like
so interesting.
A meeting became like a very different thing. And you had to like figure out what's the, you know, what are the norms of all these different types of meetings. But I don't know. I'm sure lots of people still are feeling it and haven't like settled on the norms and stuff, but I don't know. I feel I'm probably fortunate where things have settled quite a bit for me.
Yeah. And it depends on the culture of how your team functions, right? Because I am fortunate enough to be on a team where if I block out certain time, because I myself want to have all my meetings kind of back to back, I do not like it when I have like, half an hour in between two meetings. Like, what am I going to do in the, half an hour? There are little things you can do, but at the same time, like the less context switching, the better. Right. So yeah, I tried to block out my time, and I think I'm lucky that I'm looking at this coming week, I might have like 5-6 hours of meetings in total for the whole week, which I'm like, let's keep it this way all the time. But yeah, I would say too, like, if you are able to, definitely try to schedule a time, and say, this is my work time, and block it out. And if somebody wants to schedule a meeting, just tell them, hey, I would like to, if you can schedule a meeting after my 3:00 or whatever, so that you can kind of take control a little bit of your schedule too, because it's so hard. And I know, of course, there are meetings that you don't get to control, like the monthly staff meeting. You don't get to control that, right? Town hall or anything. But I would say that like a lot of companies and a lot of employees, just your colleagues too, I from what I've seen, I mean, in my own experience and from what, in my circle, people have mentioned, is that everybody's going through the same thing. Everyone is trying to be empathetic to everybody. So if you feel like you can, make that ask and say, hey, can we move that meeting later, or however, works out better for you. And take control of your schedule if you can. But again, I still want to, if there's any startup or any leadership position listening, I'm sure you want your family time too. And let's all try to make it happen and not get everyone all burnt out along the way doing great things. So yeah. And I think that's probably
maybe one of the last points is like, as leaders and as like organizations, like we really should have that as an important part of what we're doing, and to make sure that like employees aren't getting burnt out. Because I mean, ultimately, a burnt out employee, like we were talking about, like somebody who's chronically stressed, exhausted, cynical, and ineffective, like literally the symptoms of burnout is going to not be very good at what they're doing. Right. And so like how to encourage them to do some of these things, to like, take a break, to find the things that are working for them, to empower them to do good work, and to empower their, like the teams to have autonomy to solve difficult problems. And then to have, to encourage people to like speak up and make sure that they are not like, they're not chronically overwhelmed and getting burnt out. Because I mean, that's like employee turnover is, I mean, that's just so costly to an organization and to a team, that it takes so long to recover from something like that. I mean, I think you can be just overly, and I've seen organizations that are just, they don't give that the proper respect of how difficult it is for teams and people to recover from losing an individual or losing somebody, and just expect like everybody to kind of pick up the weight. I mean, it can be really, really difficult to shoulder that burden. And then as that kind of goes on, like more and more people just get burnt out, and eventually like you hit a critical point of like, where are you just going to completely lose the ability to do anything valuable for your business and for your customers. So balancing all of those things, like it's a hard thing as a leader and as an organization, but putting the right mechanisms in place to make sure that, you know, people, your people aren't getting burnt out, and they are able to like openly talk about like what challenges they're facing, and if they're and they're able to like take an actual break. Like it's not just constant death marches until people are like, I'm done, I have to go find somewhere else to work because I can't take a break, and that sort of thing.
For sure. And when I just said Domino's, I feel like I was, it sounded like I was calling out the pizza place, but what I meant was definitely the domino effect of, you know, one person is out and now everyone has to take on the load, like you said. And then that other, you know, the rest of the team is now burnt out because of that. Yeah. So definitely not calling out the pizza chain. Sponsor us. Anyways, so yeah, I agree. And I look forward to my trip next week to get away for a little bit. But I would really like to know what's going on with you, listeners. Tweet at us. Are you burnt out? Where are you at? Are you stressed? But I hope that we're all able to get out. I mean, right now I feel like we're all coming out of the COVID timeline, and now is the time where everyone's finding the new normal, like the new normal after, you know, everyone, by everyone, I mean, most of us are getting, you know, vaccinated, and what that looks like, it's going to change a little bit too. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, and hopefully everyone's just getting less stressed, not more stressed. So
yeah.
Anything you want to add?
No, it's good.
Awesome. And now it's time for me to circle back to my password manager comment to give my shout out. I'm swapping my original shout out to my password manager. So product shout out. Mine is I've used 2 password managers in the past. My choice is called 1Password 7. I really don't know why they call it 1Password 7. But I have used, what is the other one? Oh, man, the other one, it has like the red branding. Hold on. Let me Google that really quick. The other one I don't like as much. Oh, LastPass. That's the other one that I didn't like. But 1Password 7 has been so great. I keep all my passwords in there, and I only need to know my master password, and everything is secured, and I don't have to try to remember anything, which is great. And that's it. I had to swap all my original ones. So now that's all that I am prepared to talk about with this new shout out.
Nice. All right, cool. Well, I will, I'll give a shout out going along the lines of our sprinkler and irrigation talk to Beehive, which is smart irrigation like control. So I switched over all of our stuff. We had the original, which is like manual controls and timers and stuff that were installed when they built the house like 4 years ago or whatever. Immediately like switched over to Beehive, which is a smart sprinkler control system, which you can like has an app, you can control it from your phone and stuff. It's just awesome. Absolutely love it. My parents are about to like install theirs and everything. So like I'm just like super pumped about it. Been using it for a long time. Cause I mean, so you can control everything from your phone. So you can go out to like your yard and like test things without like going back and forth to your control box and like turning things on and off, which is super awesome. It has like rain delays. So if like it's raining like it is right now, it automatically knows that and like can delay my sprinklers so they don't come on for like a few days after the rain and stuff like that. So it's awesome. Love it. So I'll give a shout out.
I think I'm looking at it. I just Googled it and it's B-HYVE.
That's it.
Right?
Yep.
What a name.
Yeah.
We should do an episode on products that are just like either with crazy spelling or crazy, Pronunciation. Nowadays, I feel like there are a lot of them. I did not.
Pretty much everything.
Beehive was not what I was thinking. Like when I first saw the spelling.
Yep. No, that makes sense.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. If you haven't got one of those installed, I would definitely suggest it. It's totally worth it. Super easy. And then you can control everything from your phone. So you don't ever have to go to your actual control box to control your sprinklers and irrigation. You can just do it all from your phone, which I totally love.
Does it fix my broken hardware in my sprinkler system? Oh,
no broken.
Then that's
fixes no broken hardware. Unfortunately, that's all up to you. But it'll be easy to test. Once you fix your hardware, you can just literally pull out your phone and tap it and make sure that it's working. So you don't have to go back and forth, which is awesome.
How did you know that's what we did?
Because I have been there and I know exactly how the testing phase goes of installing and walking back and forth to each of the things and testing it. And it's just a huge pain.
It was so fun. Just like, hey, try it now.
Yep. And then if
it's on.
And then if it's not working, or you have like a pipe that explodes, which I've had, which the shouting of turn it off. And it's that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
That's the home ownership flavors that I like.
Yeah.
The chaos, the small chaos, not the pipe bursting. But sweet. That's it. Anything else?
No, that'll do.
All right, you guys, keep listening. And I just had this thought too. I was thinking like, one day this podcast is gonna get so big. And then I was like, maybe I don't want it to get so big, because then we'll have to really, really, I don't know, like think a lot about what we were saying on the podcast. Do you feel that way? Do you have that worry?
That it's just going to be so huge. I have that worry about everything I do, that one day it's just going to be so big and everything is going to be just so famous that
can't handle
they can't handle it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's always in the back of my mind.
I think you can handle it. I don't know if I can. I hope that happens to you, because I think you're hustling. So anyways, everyone go subscribe to Kyle's newsletter. So there's that.
All right. Do it.
The end.
All right.
Oh, yep. Do it. And the end. Goodbye.
See ya. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can find out more about us and our podcast on our website at productbydesign.co. You can also follow us on Twitter at prodbydesign. That's at prod_by_design. You can follow me on Twitter at Kyle Larry Evans, and you can also find Eva on Twitter at Yan Chow Chow. See you next time.